Could we please stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance and thank you, Dr. Orlando? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This brings us to our first session of public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would care to step forward and address the school committee at this time?
Good evening, I'm Ellen Erickson, and I am a trustee for These Kids Foundation, and I'm here along with the other trustees to speak tonight about the relocation of the airport. As you may recall, in November last November, the school committee did unanimously vote for the relocation, to authorize the relocation of the amphitheater from the ground school to the Breslin. But at that time, cost was not discussed. And after school closed, I met with Mayor Holliday in July to find out what the status of the relocation was. And she informed me then that the cost was prohibitive, and so she would not want to move the amphitheater from the ground to the Breslin School. The trustees, we feel that this decision was based on just one estimate, and to halt this project might be a little bit premature. And so we would like to request that the ground school feasibility study address the relocation of the amphitheater and include in its scope of work a work plan, a time frame, and as well as the cost of the relocation. We hope through this process that a reasonable cost can be obtained to complete the project. We also urge, if possible, some of the surplus funds from the building of the new school be considered for use to offset the cost of the amphitheater relocation. We're grateful to the school committee, the endorsement of the relocation as a worthy project, and we hope the project is viewed as an opportunity worth the challenge. Or it's an opportunity to bring an additional outdoor classroom to the Bresnahan School, which will directly benefit those students, as well as honor the memory of Lydia Collins, who spent her teaching career nurturing and educating the students in the Newburyport Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to our agenda for the evening. I would like to take a look at the minutes. The first set of minutes I would like you to take a look at is the school committee public conversation of Tuesday, July 1, 2014. Could I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Are we still looking for them? Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Thank you. I'd now like you to look at the school committee business meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 1st, 2014. Could I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries. Thank you. Do we have warrants?
Do we have warrants? We have warrants. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate of $17,133.48 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public School amounting in the aggregate of $61,609.66 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are also no conflicts. with these bills.
Discussion?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
And
carries.
we have one more warrant. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $266,457.38 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There is a conflict with the mayor on this one.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Present.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is that it, Mr. Menon?
That-
Do you have
I'm
more?
running out of ink, so I'd better be. Yes, I believe that is it.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to the fifth item on our agenda, which is the superintendent's evaluation. As you know, this is a cyclical process. It begins when the superintendent entered our school system, and we are now in the reporting out of the summative phase of her evaluation. Each of us has filled out a document that we have been given from the Department of Education, and in terms of the new teacher administrator evaluation document that was adopted by the state of Massachusetts. So we all independently filled out our own rating system, and then everyone sent their copy of that to me. It was collated, so we have one document to present to the superintendent. And what I would like to do now is to read the summary of the evaluation for the superintendent for the 2013-2014 school year. And then I'm going to ask individual school committee members if they would like to comment further. We do not have to go through the entire document. There are 4 standards in the document. We are going to talk about those, talk about what we feel are strengths and some challenges that we feel we're ready to move on for next year. As part of this process, this evening, when we finish with the evaluation, at some point we will be talking about school committee priorities, which will feed right into the cycle for the superintendent and will inform her development of SMART goals for next year. So the process never starts, it never ends. We're just in the summative phase right now, and we'll be moving on to the next section of it as soon as the superintendent has done some SMART goals. So the following executive summary reflects the evaluation of Superintendent of Schools Susan Vaccaro completed by the Newburyport School Committee in August 2014. The school committee, in collaboration with the superintendent, agreed to utilize the administration evaluation process that has been adopted by the state of Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with appropriate modifications. The modifications were substantive, but in the view of the school committee, appropriate. They were designed to provide a meaningful evaluation of Ms. Vaccaro's first year as a superintendent. The Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee recommended the use of existing described standards as the broad base for the evaluation and suggested that some, but not all, of the elements specific to each standard to achieve proficiency be used as a framework for evaluating Ms. Vaccaro. Instead, the evaluation framework relied on areas of focus articulated by the superintendent in her entry plan. The established evaluation system, once in place, utilizes a rolling series of SMART goals. Going forward, at the conclusion of this current evaluation, the committee expects to work with the superintendent to develop those SMART goals, which would align future evaluations more closely with the established process. Evidence of success was understandably more limited for this year. We recognize that the superintendent became a part of our district at a time of great challenge and opportunity. We were in the middle of 2 major construction projects. We are fully engaged in a major review of an implementation of a series of major changes in our special education services. We had agreed to pilot PARCC testing in some grades. We were in the middle of piloting the new education evaluation system. We were debating how to restructure management of 2 schools that will merge in the fall of 2014. We were also in the midst of significant changes to several departments in the district and in individual schools in response to significant community interest in improvement. Add to that the simple reality that we were adopting a new city charter that changed the length of the term of the mayor to 4 years. A budget crisis years in the making resulted in a significant deficit at a time when the schools were trying to restore services that had been cut as far back as 7 years before the superintendent arrived. And finally, she was working with a school committee that was, in turn, working with its third superintendent in 5 years, fourth superintendent in 8 years. The situation is and remains very dynamic. All of these factors were taken into account as part of the evaluation process. Overview. In its evaluation of the first year in Newburyport experienced by Superintendent Susan Vaccaro, the Newburyport School Committee finds that on all 4 major indicators, instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture, Ms. Vaccaro has achieved a level of proficient. We have seen evidence of moderate student growth and a clear indication that more growth for more students is possible under Ms. Vaccaro's leadership. We recognize and note work to be done. We also noted work that exceeded our expectations. If there is a message to take away from our consideration of her first year at the helm of our schools, it would be that the school committee has seen sufficient evidence that Ms. Vaccaro is the right leader at the right time with the right skill set, experience, and attitudes to lead Newburyport schools forward, to help us deliver the education we believe our children deserve. While there is a temptation to want things to change now, it is clear to the school committee that Ms. Vaccaro is the leader who will get the job done. In her continued efforts to identify issues and focus on solutions that promote improved school cultures and renewed focus on student achievement, the superintendent was encouraged to broaden her efforts to gather feedback and obtain information and not overly rely on her immediate team as a singular source of information. The superintendent was encouraged to communicate with the school committee in a more timely and comprehensive manner to enable better, more relevant decisions from the committee. In the superintendent's selected areas of focus, her efforts were primarily considered by the school committee to be proficient. 2 notable differences were the general belief that her efforts on behalf of the school building projects merited an exceeded expectations rating, and her effort to address the challenges we face with special education is yielding some progress. In standard number 1, instructional leadership, in all of the elements of the instructional leadership, the superintendent was rated proficient. Notable school committee comments in this area are included. Strong and impactful efforts and leadership from the superintendent in pushing to align curriculum with Common Core standards. There has been a noticeable uptick in some measures of student achievement, AP Science scores, for example. This has been accompanied by a clear focus on professional development that emphasizes teamwork, collaboration, and sharing of skills between educators. The committee recognizes this as an investment and shares the optimism of the superintendent that outcomes will validate these efforts going forward. The entry plan of the superintendent was notable in its synthesis of critical state and federal mandates with local efforts to promote academic growth. Her insights were keen and thoughtful, and her analysis of challenges and opportunities was strong. Areas of challenge. The rebuilding of special education, rebuilding of trust with students, families, and the greater community, creating a culture that relies on evidence to identify areas of student growth. In particular, we remain challenged in encouraging student growth and achievement at the elementary school level as indicated by the MCAS scores. Engaging students, parents, and faculties in the development of strategies to enhance student growth and achievement. Currently, we tend toward teacher-based strategy or top-down, administratively driven approach. We need to produce evidence that the new evaluation system for both teachers and administrators is being moved into full implementation. The school committee sees an opportunity to produce more tangible evidence that the level of accountability to the student the superintendent holds herself to is also being equally applied to all administrators who are in turn clear about those expectations of school staff. Standard number 2, management and operations. Notable comments. The superintendent has demonstrated strength in her ability to keep the focus on evolving change while still accomplishing all of the management tasks inherent in closing a school, combining 2 in a new school, and putting that online, on schedule, and in accommodating the renovation of the existing building. The school committee also noted that the superintendent serves as a consistent, strong role model for ethical behavior and that she demonstrates confidence in her staff. Her focus on recruiting and hiring and her backfilling a lot of the missing procedures and documents needed to recruit strongly are also noted and appreciated by the school committee. The school committee is impressed with how transparent and facilitative the superintendent's handling of the budget process was for FY 14-15. Her focus on team building and in cultivating leadership across staffs were also strengths. Areas of challenge: continuing to improve the school budget in terms of timing, engaging the community more actively in the development phase of the budget, improving the utilization of data as a driver informant in the budget process, creating a long-term strategic plan to help set goals and to budget toward these goals. Standard 3, family and community engagement. Notable school committee comments. The superintendent has done an outstanding job in learning more about Newburyport through attendance at community functions and meetings, as well as outreach. She has excelled in becoming the face of the Newburyport schools and has reached out to many of the existing shareholders through meetings, dialogues, and attendance at meetings. Areas of challenge: expanding outreach to other constituencies and stakeholders that are not represented by the business and philanthropic community, such as other schools, art community groups, theater groups, and finding ways to engage them with the schools and with education, in the understanding that doing so is further encouraged for the culture of the school system to continue to evolve and become a more open and collaborative community at large. Working with the school committee to help the community about the challenges of both funded and unfunded mandates, focusing on growing and supporting the efforts of school councils and their contribution to our understanding of school needs through the school improvement plans, and build and refine feedback loops that encourage constituencies to share information and ideas about how students and schools are doing, and in general, seek feedback from outside the more traditional hierarchical methods of moving information to the superintendent's office. 4th standard, professional culture. Notable comments. The school committee noted that the superintendent had strongly demonstrated on a daily basis a commitment to communication with stakeholders and staff, promoting professional and moral ideas and modeling them herself. And she has done an excellent proactive job handling conflict professionally and objectively. Challenges for the coming year: the articulation of strong and clear educational visions for the schools and improving the proactivity, timeliness, depth, and clarity of communications with the school committee. That is the summary statement for the evaluation of the superintendent. I would like any school committee member, if you have a specific comment that wasn't covered in this summary, to feel free to make a comment or a reaction. All right, I say congratulations.
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
Just that I think what I would like to say is that it was a challenging first year. I feel like we made some progress. We still have challenges ahead of us, and I'm prepared to address those challenges as we move forward. I am looking forward to having the building projects wind down so I can turn my attention to teaching and learning and to the important efforts that are being made in the classroom. So I will be looking forward to that in the coming year.
Thank you. We begin again. I want to give special thanks to the Superintendent Subcommittee on Evaluation, who has worked diligently all year, meeting with Ms. Vaccaro, and particularly this summer to Mr. Lukens and Mr. Menon, who helped collate all of this and bring it to the forefront for us in an easily understandable manner. So the school committee needs to vote on this document, that this is the evaluation of the superintendent of schools, Susan Vaccaro, for 2013-2014. Could I hear a roll call, Mrs. Kennedy, please?
We don't need a motion?
I would like a motion first. I kind of made one, but I didn't. Second.
Discussion?
Discussion?
I have just a comment. In future evaluations, is it fair that we'll have more examples of evidence provided by the superintendent?
Yes. Yes, and I will answer that if I may. Yes, this year, what we talked about with the superintendent, that it was most important for her to develop background on the elements underneath each of the standards. Next year, we are anticipating that there will be more evidence built in all of those areas. We did not, if you recall, use the entire evaluation document. And with everything that was happening this year, the subcommittee agreed that the superintendent could minimize the evidence that she was going to present to us.
Okay. Can I ask, though, is that going to be extended to administrators and teachers as well?
Well, I don't know what their evaluation looked like, so do you want to answer that, Superintendent?
I did a similar process with my administrators in the first year, feeling that it was difficult for me to jump in and to evaluate them and hold them to the same standards, so I did a similar process with the administrators this year. And we will, just as we will be moving into the formal process with me this year, I will be doing the same thing with the administrators.
Okay. And that was evident in your narrative comments. I only say that, I agree with the total rating of proficient. And I just, in studying this rubric, from my standpoint, I had a hard time bringing together a summary comment because I didn't have a lot of evidence to look at other than daily news articles in what was provided in your narrative. But I would agree with all the rankings of proficiency. It would have been helpful to me just to have more evidence. And I'll just use a concrete example. There's, in the ratings here, there's a specific number given for visits to schools. And there's also a protocol noted for school visits. And there's also a report, if you will, that's supposed to be generated when you visit a school. So I'm not, I have no doubt that you did all those. It's just that as I read the DESE rubric here and I see all the things of evidence that they're asking for, whether it be analysis of student feedback, those protocols and school visits, I just hope that, I wasn't expecting them all. But it would have been good to have a few. However, having said that, your response to some situations, notably the busing issues with the schedule earlier last school year, and how you handle that and how you gathered people together for forums, that was very helpful. So I agree in the spirit of all the commentary that you've come into the district and you've stabilized and begun to steer us out of problems. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, Mr. Manning?
Yeah, it just seemed to me before we took this vote that it would be at least worth having a conversation about what the next steps are.
Mm-hmm.
That, so what are we going to do with this document? I know that when bureaucracies approve documents like this, there's a special spot on a shelf where they go often. And I just want to make sure that this is a living document, that there is a next step, and that we're going to talk about what that is, just briefly,
I mean, as I alluded to, what will happen next, the superintendent has already started to work on district goals and SMART goals for her administration. What our intent is that she will take the information we have given her in this document, the areas of strengths and some of the areas that we feel need further focus, and she will develop SMART goals around that. The Superintendent's Evaluation Committee is one of those long-term committees that never goes away. And that's where most of the decisions for this year came from. And, as Mr. Cole mentioned, we specifically said to the superintendent that she didn't have to bend over backwards giving us evidence with everything that was going on. But as she just stated, and I'm going to state too, the next time her evaluation committee gets together to meet, it will be to talk about SMART goals and to continue this process. Anything else you want?
Nope, I'm fine with that. That is the next step.
Yes, yes. Did you want to add to that? All right. Anybody else? Do we second already? Yes. All in favor? Oh, roll call, please. We have to roll call.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Menon?
Yes.
Ms. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. DeCanta?
Yes.
Mayor Holliday?
Yes.
Mr. Lukens?
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Congratulations. And here's your signed copy of the document. It's signed right now. The composites are signed by the mayor and myself. What I'm going to ask each school committee member to do is to send a signature copy, or I will collect them and bring them so that the superintendent has a signed cover sheet from each member of this committee. So that'll be a next step for you as well.
And thank you all, members of the school committee. I appreciate the fact, I was very pleased to see that we had a strong consensus on the evaluation and her strengths as well as challenges going forward. I clearly look forward to moving beyond the school building projects, and as you've said many times, wait to see what I can do when I don't have to spend all my time working on school projects. And as I've also said before, you were here and joined us at the right time and have moved us in absolutely the right direction, and I so look forward to working with you another year. So thank you, Susan, and we're pleased to have you here.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the school committee self-evaluation. Right now, we are in the process of contacting certain sites for models for our self-evaluation for this year. We will be looking at the Department of Education and the Mass Association for School Committees. So just as we evaluate the superintendent, we evaluate our own status during the year, every year. So we're starting to work on that, and that's one of the next pieces that you'll see from us as a committee. I'd like to turn your attention now to the school committee meeting schedule for 2014-2015, which is in your packet and requires a vote. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It's the same kind of schedule we've had in the past. When we get further along in our agenda, Mr. Menon's going to explain some new policies and communication pieces that we're going to build into our school committee meetings this year. So some of these, the focus and the times of the school committee meetings may change a little bit, but these are the dates that we're looking at. Does anybody have a comment? Well, let me do a motion first. Could I have a motion on this calendar?
So moved for adoption.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving right along. Next thing, we've asked school committee members to prepare in terms of priorities for the superintendent and the school district for next year. This is part of a collaborative process where district goals and the superintendent's goals and the school committee goals, it is Susan's Superintendent Vaccaro's firm belief that they should all be one. So we have asked you, or I have asked you, to take a look at the rubrics at a glance, the school improvement plans, and any other thing you had at your disposal, and asked you to come prepared tonight to identify 2 or 3 goals that you feel are priorities for the school committee for this year. So I think I'm just, if I can do it, can we go in alphabetical order? Steve, Mr. Cole? Because I'll forget that one.
Yeah, sure. Similar to what you were just saying, I think one priority to start with for me is that the budget process is aligned to effectively contributing to reaching the school system's goals and objectives, which will contribute to the community more readily understanding how public funds are allocated and used and why they are needed. Such priorities should be included in a budget message published by the school committee and detailed according to the school budget approach or process. And again, the budget should be presented to the school committee with enough time to allow an internal review, publication, appropriate hearings, and a final adoption, a vote by the school committee before we pass it forward. Having said that, it's difficult to pinpoint 2 or 3 things for the next year. Some of the areas that I would like to see some focus on are, again, student achievement, making sure that we have higher student achievement for all students. Special education, making sure that, programmatically we're providing as much as we can for, all those students in those programs and keeping them in the least restrictive environment as much as possible. And then beyond that, there's some particular areas that I would say are maybe more of a longer term. And again, another area is operational effectiveness of our schools, and I think we're really going to appreciate that, having the new renovated school at the Knockmolan, newly renovated, as well as the brand new model school at the Bresnahan. But beyond that, there are a few areas that, may merit some immediate attention, and a lot of those relate to, how we're remunerating people. Let me offer a couple examples. One is what we pay our substitute teachers, which as compared to other school districts in the area, we're lower. I think the amount we pay per diem is $75, and most other school districts pay about $100. If we want to attract quality substitute teachers, or if we want to have some of our teachers who have come through the school districts and have institutional knowledge, if we want those teachers to stay and work in this school community, that would help that. Similarly, I think we should be charging a higher rate for some of the services we provide when people use our facilities and services that support those, like custodial service. Prior to the budget last year, I did a little research comparing some school districts, and Newburyport, we're pretty low in terms of what we charge for custodial rate, for example, and I think some of our facility fees could be enhanced. And again, this is all things that would bring money to the school district. But I also understand that with respect to the custodial things, that may involve something to do with the labor negotiation. And finally, the last one is got to do with what we remunerate our coaches and assistant coaches for sports. And recognizing the importance of academics, as I did earlier in terms of student achievement, I can't leave out a balance that involves athletics, and I can't put my finger on my notes here, but I've done a little research, and we remunerate our coaches and assistant coaches quite a bit less than other schools like Masconomet, Linfield, just to name a couple. And we've had coaches in our sports. A number of them have come before us at these school committee meetings for like indoor track or cross country, coaches that have been in our system 15, 20, 30 years. They're probably, probably not going to be around much longer to coach. Their love, their passion for the sport's not going to hinder them. But comparatively, there's other school districts that are paying much less experienced coaches nearly double what our current coaches earn. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is trying to have some equity or some fairness in some of these areas that I think merit some attention. And moving forward, I think that would be a valuable thing for all involved.
Thank you. Mr. Decanter.
I have 4 things that I would like to see included on the list, recognizing that they are not necessarily the only ones that will be on the list, but these are the ones that I feel right now we should be looking at. The first, of course, is in the area of student achievement. And I guess the word that I would like to see addressed better when we talk about student achievement is all students. What are we doing, and do we need to spend time looking at what we're doing for the middle-of-the-road students who are just getting along? What are we doing for the students that need remedial help? What are we doing for the students that are off the charts in terms of their intelligence and ability to do things? They are all deserving of the best education we can possibly give them. And I think that we need to begin to think about that in terms of there might be some, not stratification, but certainly strategies that we need to apply to different cohorts or cadres of students and learning in there. So that would be my first. On a also related to student achievement, I'd like to see us make still more progress. And I know we've got things in place, but nonetheless, I'd like to keep the focus on it, and that is middle school math. What are we? Middle school math.
Okay, sorry.
What are we doing to ensure that all students are prepared for an aggressive and timely completion of a math program in our high school? If students come to our high school without any algebra experience, they're behind the 8 ball by a year. And I've come to know all too many students that have fallen into that trap. So we need to take a good look at that. And I do know that is somewhat addressed by the Common Core. So that's why I'm saying I know we're moving in the right direction. I just want to make sure we keep the focus on that. From an operational point of view, finishing, implementing, and then fine-tuning our website. Please.
Please.
It's in the works.
That is a key communication tool, and I think as we take a look at it, as we talk about our communication goals, we have put an awful lot of hope and weight on that website, and we've got a lot to deliver on. It's not going to be ready and working in the way we want it to out of the box. Websites never are. Mm-hmm. They are a living being that needs to be fed, needs to be cajoled, needs to be refined, needs to be fine-tuned. And I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is, in addition to making it happen, which I know we're doing, I don't want it to say, we did that one, now we can move on to the next thing. That's going to require some constant, consistent effort to maintain. And finally, on the budgetary front, I'm going to take a slightly different approach than what Mr. Cole was talking about. I think we need to do a better job of communicating, educating the public at large about how schools in Massachusetts, and specifically how schools in Newburyport, are funded. Our citizens need to understand Chapter 70, even if we're not getting much out of Chapter 70. And they need to understand why we're not getting much out of Chapter 70. They need to know what can be done. If they need to lobby their state officials, what is the area in which we need them to lobby on our behalf? And I think there's still some confusion in that area, and there always will be, judging by the nature of the funding formulas here. But we need to do a better job of making that part of our ongoing conversation with the public at large.
Thank you. Mayor?
I have to agree with both Mr. Cole and Mr. Decanter that I think the budget is a very important process and one of the most important jobs we have as a school committee. I think that the new charter establishing a joint meeting with the City Council and the school committee is a step in the right direction. As you've heard me say before, I think we have a City Council now that is very, very invested and interested in the school district, the school system, and by starting out that process sometime in the early fall as the way we begin to roll out the budget process, I think makes the most sense. I agree with Superintendent Vaccaro's desire to start the budget process sooner. It also will help us as we begin to establish priorities and not be at the tail end as we're working on crunching numbers. I think we'll have a much better sense of where the priorities are, as well as more opportunity for input from the public and from the broader school district. We do have now a 20-hour grant writer in the city who is very, very skilled, and she's willing to do some work with the schools, but I would really like us to establish a grant team to work with her in the schools, because as a part-time position, she won't be able to do all of that. But I think we're missing opportunities there in terms of applying for grants that can also help us move some of our, especially initiatives and special programs forward. Special education continues to be a real concern. I'm encouraged by the fact that Senator Ives has organized a regional ad hoc committee to begin looking at special education in a broader regional way, but I feel that we're not getting enough information up to the committee level. We know that there's been some policies and procedures that have been developed. I've never seen them. We know that there's some book that has been developed. We have a much stronger liaison. Thank you, Ms. McCarthy, for our relationship with the parent group, which I think is critical. But I think we have a lot more work to do in this area, and I would like us to keep that close on our radar as we move forward, because as we know, our numbers are difficult. Every child deserves to have the appropriate education and services they need, but I think as our schools have moved out of a crisis mode, we can begin to look at developing quality programs that will increase the level of confidence in some of our families across the community, and hopefully return children to our community, to our district, as well as prevent other children from being placed out of district unless it's absolutely necessary. I think communication up to the school committee is critical. I see bits and pieces of information that comes to the committee and then we don't hear about it again. as we go forward. I think that there needs to be a better communication loop, if you will. For example, we heard that we did well in our NEOSC evaluation, so now we need feedback. Where are we? What's being implemented and what's happening to move that forward? That's just one example. I think that we have a lot of initiatives that are happening in the schools. I'd like to know about them. Whether or not that requires full discussion at a school committee, I'm not sure, but some way of getting that information to us so that we are aware of what's going on. You've heard me talk and lament about higher ed partnerships for a very long time. We had a very small program with Olin University, which was way too far away. Ms. Vaccaro and I recently met with the president of Salem State University and her team, who are very excited about doing more work with us. We really need to move forward in this area. Schools all around us are doing dual enrollment. We are not. We need to move this forward. We need to strengthen our partnerships with higher education. There's ways that they can reach in and help us too, whether it's in world languages or electives or other things that we are struggling to put back into our curriculum. I think we could look to higher ed for some help. I'd really like to see us strengthen place-based education, more information on our AP and honors programs, and I'd like us to, we've talked about senior projects for forever, and would like to finally see that roll forward as something that our seniors are doing once they've moved past that, all finishing January finals and have applied to schools, and then what? Let's get them engaged and involved and do something that's meaningful, that's related to what they want to do or study. Legislative advocacy, I think we've talked about in terms of Chapter 70 funding. I'm encouraged that Jay Ionini has been working with a team who are pulling together the first meeting in September to bring all the communities together who really are getting the short end of the stick in terms of Chapter 70 funding. So I'm encouraged, and I think we need to continue to work in that area. And of course, all of these things that I talk about reflect on student achievement, which, again, we have a new subcommittee of the school committee for that, but those I see are really the crux of where we need to move forward.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mr. Lukens.
Sure. So first, I'd just like to reiterate my agreement with the statement that I think the superintendent is the right person at the right time. I think that you've done an excellent job over the last year, and I really look forward to working with you, with the leadership team, and the rest of this committee and others on these and other priorities over the course of the year. So thank you. In terms of priorities, I'll lay out 5 that I would call out tonight. One is, and 2 are sort of overarching and 3 are more specific, but one is, I think it's really important that we articulate and gain consensus for a longer-term strategic plan and set of priorities that guide discussions like this in the future. I think we'd be in a great place in future years if we were able to work off a single document that lays out our priorities that we agree on, that community groups agree on, that teachers agree on, that students agree on, and use that as a starting point for any future discussion around priorities. So putting together that vision and gaining consensus for a vision that consolidates all of these priorities and the priorities from all of our other stakeholder groups in education, I think would put us in an excellent position to continue to progress in future years, because I think that we have made progress over the last year, and I think that really articulating that vision and gaining consensus for a single vision in terms of what education should look like in the future would be a tremendous step in terms of our strategic ability to move forward in the future. Number 2 would be technology. We are gaining a lot of technology through the building projects, and I think that we have some work to do around our ability to use technology and integrate technology fully into our curriculum. I think we're a little bit behind the ball there when I compare Newburyport to other similar school districts, and I think that we've got an opportunity to to use the additional technology that is coming to us as part of the building projects to our advantage, and also to stop and think about what we want our long-term vision to be around the use of technology and the integration of technology into the curriculum in the classroom. Number 3 would be special education. Again, I think that we made progress in this area, and I think it's an area where we need to continue to rebuild trust and improve programming in that area. I think that that to me is a significant opportunity area. Again, an area where I think that we made progress, but where I think that there's further progress to be made. Number 4 is prioritizing and costing out curriculum enhancements. So the term aspirational curriculum is one that's been used frequently over the last year, but I think that that means something different to just about every person that uses it. And so I see that as being a part of our strategic plan. If we are to continue to build programming, when we have the funds to do so, what should those funds be used for, and how does what are the priorities for our curriculum needs? What's our strategy for addressing the gaps in curriculum? Putting together more AP courses, foreign languages, building professional development. There's so many things that we could spend money on if we had it. So what are our priorities in that area so that we can be prepared to do that and to get closer to the aspirational communities that we talk about when comparing MCAT scores and comparing ourselves to other districts in Massachusetts. And number 5 is just generally student achievement. And rather than, obviously that, well, not obviously, but that's my most important priority is improving student achievement. And for a little bit more specificity, I would like to see more focus on improving achievement results in some of the earlier and middle grades. Some of those results are a little concerning to me. I'm impressed by achievement results in some of the later grades, and I think that those later grade results could potentially be spectacular in best in class in Massachusetts if we're able to improve results in some of the earlier grades, especially in math.
Thank you. Ms. McCarthy.
So it's interesting the perspectives we bring to the table, I find. In agreeing with what everyone has said about budget, achievement, and planning, I certainly think are priorities. So I decided instead of reiterating those, I was going to go a little bit further and be a little bit painfully honest. But before I do that, believing wholeheartedly Susan is the best person for the job, the best person for Newburyport. But I would love to see improved communication. Special ed, I think that there's been gains, and I'm not sure that I would agree that they've been significant. I think, to be honest, I think I'm remain disappointed, but I know it's been, a whirlwind of a year, but I don't want to sacrifice our special ed kids. So I think that our special ed is not running like a well-oiled machine, and I think that there's been a few balls dropped this past year. So I look forward to it. I certainly believe that we can continue to make gains, or I wouldn't bring it up. But communication as well. I continue to learn a lot about Park. I'm wondering if everyone else is learning what I'm learning about Park, because I have many red flags about Park. And I'm wondering if the people around me do, or if it's just me, or maybe I don't understand it. But I have concerns about Park. I have concerns for the whole state with Park. But that being said, I hope that we will continue to educate ourselves and not blindly just keep pressing forward for Park. I even have concerns about the Common Core, but not sure I can do much about that. And I also have concerns about, under communication, I would say about some of the litigation, mediation. I just would love to be more informed when appropriate. The other issue I have, I will always argue for a better calendar, or at least one that I think is better. But my last one, and I guess you come from a really business point of view, and I come from a social work point of view. Going out on a limb, I think we have culture problems here. I think they're huge. Specifically, I think that we have some inconsistent discipline policies that are adding to our poor culture. I've gained some information over the last few weeks that is alarming. We'll share in a much more appropriate setting than this. But I look forward to, and I think we need to really see some of those culture principles you talked about sooner rather than later. And I know that they don't develop overnight, but I think that we have culture problems with our discipline. I think we have culture problems between our schools. I think our schools are very individual. They run very individual. I hope that we continue to make a better connection. But I would be remiss not to just be honest that I think there needs to be a serious, hard look at the stuff that is outside the budget, outside achievement, outside of planning, all of which I believe in. But just figured for the sake of this, I would be a little bit more specific. But I guess those are my priorities for the upcoming year and actually years and going forward and forever. So.
Thank you. Mr. Madden.
I have put together 3 goals that really are made up of about 49 goals into 3.
Oh, gee.
But I also, one goal that I have, it'll be short. Short, concise, and to the point.
And elegant.
Thank you. But I would be really remiss in not commenting on an area that I did not bring up, in a sense out of frustration, and that is what Audrey talked about looking at our culture. And we talk about school culture, but we talk about school culture as if that is something that is unique to the walls of this space and doesn't reflect what people are bringing into this building as the culture they come with. And I really think it is time for a conversation, a much bigger conversation about the culture of discipline. Who gets disciplined and when do they get disciplined? How consistent is that? We have the opportunity, policy has the opportunity, because we have new state mandated disciplinary expectations that we are considering and that we'll be talking about. So we do have an opportunity to talk about some of that, but the bigger cultural issue, I really appreciate Audrey bringing it up because I think it is something that we should be talking about. In terms of looking sort of at, I looked at this from the perspective of what's the role of the school committee. I mean, there's a lot of things I would like to see happen, but some of it is not my role, but then some of it is. So I don't teach every day here, and I don't make the choices specifically very often about curriculum. But I do think I have a responsibility, and the way I framed it is to ensure that the curriculum that we are using promotes academic achievement and growth for all students, as Nick very eloquently put, for all students, that it actively engages and involves the community at large, that it utilizes 21st century skills and practices and concepts to promote growth and achievement, that it aligns with standards, that staff have the resources to do the job. And I think that I do have a responsibility as a member of the school committee to weigh in on that, to encourage that, to learn about that, to make sure we're talking about that. I think another area that will come as no surprise is that I really would like to see us focus on ensuring and promoting a real ongoing dialogue with the community. You know, we've just been through a process, policy has just been through a process in which we had an ad hoc communications conversation that was continuing right through this morning, right up until this afternoon, once we sort of released the minutes, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. I think that that's really critical, and I think that dialogue really needs to occur on multiple levels, and we need to facilitate that and encourage that. You know, and those levels, you know, literally are here at the school committee meeting. They're, you know, in the classroom, they're using school councils, making sure that there's clear and ongoing communications between the public and the schools, making sure that everybody gets to be heard. And that is across the board. That is, about budget, about culture in terms of what are our arts offerings, culture in terms of, who's getting disciplined and who isn't getting disciplined. All the topics across education, I think we need to really focus in the coming year about, the website is great. Let's continue to build on having dialogue and communication. And finally, there are a lot of other things I could talk about. I could talk about the budget. Everybody else has mentioned them, so I'd like to talk about something that I think is a critical school committee subject, goal, that we need to talk about. And that is really sort of reestablishing the school committee as a collaborative partnership and as full partners in governance of the schools and in the community. And I think that, we have not always communicated effectively within this committee. We have not always communicated from the committee to the community. And, sort of the flag for me, and this is still going on, whether information about what's happening to the schools comes from the superintendent, whether it comes from the city councilor, whether it comes from the corner office, whether it comes from a principal. When I get phone calls from people telling me, so what do you think about this issue that's happening in the schools, and I know nothing about it, and I know nothing about it because I'm first reading about it in the newspaper, or I'm first hearing about it by listening to the radio, there's a problem with that because, I've been elected, I have some responsibilities, I have some obligations, and I think that that's a real breakdown in communication. So we're not sharing information. We do have we have adopted a principle of no surprises. And that is, you can say no surprises because they're a pain, but really what that's about is sharing and working collaboratively and using all the brain power that you've got to try to solve problems, as opposed to just sort of bringing stuff in and not, so I think we really need to do that. I think that we really need to do some work as a committee. I get asked that by the community all the time, and it's time to really own it, to work on our stuff, and to be better at communicating, at identifying the issues that we need to be involved with, and doing our jobs. So those would be the three that I would suggest.
I wrote six.
Okay. I didn't do a good job then of synthesizing
No,
them. If you
that's
were able to
fine.
pick out.
I'm not. It's actually my pleasure to go last because all of the things that I am going to say to you are the things that we've heard. So it's very nice for me to understand that through the process of working together this year, working with the superintendent in collaboration, we're all talking about the same sorts of goals for our district. Major threads were the budget, student achievement. These were mentioned by more than one person. Communication at all levels, technology, including our new website and curriculum for technology, special education, the culture in our district, and the development of our strategic plan. Actually, I came in here and with 3 C's. They were culture, communication, and curriculum. So I think we're all on the same page because the things I mean inside those topics, curriculum, for instance, that, I'm going to agree with the mayor. I think there are lots of opportunities out there that we need to start tapping into, including universities and higher education, dual enrollment. I think that follows with increasing opportunities for student achievement. I know there's work beginning in that area, so I would really encourage us to continue with that, to look outside, seek outside resources. Curriculum in terms of promoting student achievement within our own classrooms. Are we doing enough? Do we have the right tools? Have we budgeted the right materials to accomplish these goals for ourselves? And the culture it's interesting. I was going to go at culture from a little bit different point of view, I guess, in that I think Susan has spent a lot of time this year building teams, and the team approach is the only approach that's going to win. We all need to be in this together, and I feel very strongly that the communication plays a part in that. So you'll be hearing from us a little bit later on as to how the school committee is going to increase their communication. I think as part of that, we need to increase or have a process for communicating information, whether it be from the superintendent's office or the mayor's office, so that, as Mr. Menon stated, we're not caught in the middle not knowing what's happening, yet someone else has already heard it. It's hard to make decisions or offer information for those things. So, good luck. Certainly you're not going to be able to tackle all of these things, but I think you've got a really clear picture as to what the school committee would like to see happen. Do you have any questions for us before we continue, or comment, or?
No, I think what I'd like to state is that I think that we will see focus on these things in varying degrees, and I think that you need to realize that there were a lot of priorities that were listed, and I think that I need to work with the leadership team, have them help to give me what their priorities would be based on this information, and then I think we have another conversation at our next school committee meeting.
And the development of the goals is certainly up to you and your leadership team. It's not up to us. What we're trying to do is talk about our perspective as elected officials and community members, and give the superintendent the best feedback we can possibly give her. And then the rest of the what happens to these is up to her. So you may not see all of these in the district priorities this year, but I think nuances of them will be intertwined in all of the work that we do as a committee and that the school district does as a whole, and the mayor's office as well. So I want to thank everyone for spending time on the priorities. It's obvious to me you really thought them out and worked on them. As I say, I'm going to repeat again, I'm really pleased to see that there's continuity among all of us as to what we see as a vision for our schools moving forward. Next item on the agenda, moving right along, updates on the building school project. So I'm going to turn this to the mayor, the superintendent, and Mr. Lukens, who represents the school committee on the building committee. Oh dear.
No, it's been a very busy summer, but I am pleased to say, why don't we start with the Bresnahan, and Susan, please, and Michael, jump in at any point. I was back on site in both buildings again today, just to be sure I had up-to-date information to share with you. Substantial completion, which means happened last Tuesday, which Monday, a week ago Monday, which means that the building is turned over from the building team, the CTA at Bresnahan, and has been turned over to the city. This is a huge step in terms of moving forward, because obviously teachers can't be in the building setting up classrooms, et cetera, if we don't have the building in the hands of the city and insured. So this was a huge step. The obstacle was the elevator didn't pass inspection, and our OPM was livid because he said in all his years he's never had an elevator not pass inspection. Obviously, since then it has passed inspection, and we're moving forward. Teachers' rooms are in really good shape. They are set up throughout the building. There is extensive cleaning happening at this juncture. Massive site work is occurring. Technology was being delivered today under lock and key in that building. Cafeteria still needs a little bit of work in terms of getting set up. We did run into a little bit of a problem when they striped the magnificent basketball court and found out that the center baskets were put in the wrong place. So we have to move those at some point. That won't be something that will impact our ability to open school on time. The offices are set up. The books are being put in. Lots of smiles from the library with all the books that the school building committee, in case you weren't aware, when we started to do an inventory of the library books that we had on hand, it was appalling to know how old some of the books were, moldy 18-year-old books. So the school building committee allocated funding so that we could outfit our library with new books and replace books that needed to be done. So their books are coming in, they're being unloaded. The media center was being set up today. The groundwork is still continuing to happen. The old Bresnahan School is down. There are still piles. And as a CHIPS school, which means we are working to be environmentally friendly and recycle and reuse as much as we can. You'll notice that there's bricks, metal, etc., are all separated into piles to be dealt with appropriately. So there's still more work that needs to happen. The paving has occurred. The bus drop-off in front of the building is done. They were working on the sidewalk will go in along the Atkinson entrance, and the paving has been done in the parking lot, and they were striping today. So the one piece of information that I didn't get today was where are the playground service people? They were supposed to be on hand today. We have 2 brand new playgrounds for pre-KK and for 1, 2, 3, and so those surfaces need to be done. And the school building committee really pushed the contractor to be sure that the sod work is completed, because otherwise you're going to have kids coming in from playgrounds tracking stuff in the schools. So overall, the fire department, it's already been, as I said, certified. We're all set. We're still working on all the systems balancing all the systems, and ask the neighborhood to be patient, because what you're hearing and what you're seeing in terms of lights and HVAC is not what's going to happen, once the building is operational and things shut down at the end of the day. And so there's been a little bit of concern on the part of neighbors about, the lights and the HVAC and all of that. We will start our first open house for families of students tomorrow from 5 to 7. They have arranged it alphabetically, and the second open house will be on Wednesday from 5 to 7, again for parents of children who will be attending pre-K through 3. On Thursday from 5 to 7 is the community open house, and everyone is invited to come and tour the building. There will be continuous tours running throughout the building during that time period from 5 to 7, and I would encourage all of you to come and see this magnificent new elementary school. And I thank all of you for supporting this project, for the community, for the city council. It truly has been a beautiful work on the part of the community coming together to enhance the facilities that we will be providing to our children pre-K through 3.
Just a clarification, Donna, I think tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday are 6:30 and 7:30.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And 5 to 7 on Thursday.
Right, okay, thank you. I would be there much too early. In terms of, Michael, anything else to add on Bresnahan?
No. I mean, the public open house is on Thursday. I certainly encourage anyone to reach that chance to come see it.
The teachers are in there already setting up their classrooms, so
Classrooms
that's
look
not
great.
a worry.
The
And
classrooms look wonderful, and
has all the furniture been delivered?
yes, everything's moving forward. Everything's good. The last thing that has to come in is food.
I was going to say, can we serve a lunch the first day?
Yes, we will be serving lunch the first day. So the kitchen, needs a good cleaning, but it's really in good shape compared to where it was the beginning of last week. I was a little concerned about that. And the one thing that we are looking at the case to provide the historical documents and photographs of Kelly Brown. And who am I missing? Thank you. And the team that came together to, sort of put those artifacts together, they've picked out a cabinet that they want in photographs of the former principals will be included it looks like they'll be in the hallway outside the gym. Because they were looking at a space to put that. So I think they did a really nice job picking the appropriate artifacts to honor the history of those gentlemen. So I thought you would be pleased to hear that too.
That is nice.
And you can go and find your tiles while you go in and on your tour on Thursday. Susan's is absolutely beautiful. One of the
Oh, guys.
one of the
I haven't seen anybody else.
no, I'm hiding mine. One of the challenges that we have is that the Bresnahan School is the certified polling place for voting. And we have a primary on September 9th. So let's just add another layer of challenge to opening a new school. Had the Rich Jones and Trish Barker in the school today. And so we've had a big transportation meeting. We know we'll have to tweak the transportation. All the crossing guards are going to receive new training. So what will happen is buses will be coming in from North Atkinson only. That's the only access to, buses from the High Street will be the only people who will be accessing the school are the buses. There'll be 13 buses coming in from High Street. Students will have to pass the High Street entrance for a while, because normally they would come down that sidewalk, but because of the construction and then the Senior Community Center will be breaking ground probably mid to late September, they will be walking down North Atkinson. That crosswalk will be replaced at the top of North Atkinson, and they will go down North Atkinson and then come up a crosswalk that will be installed tomorrow along the side of the pave of the entrance into the Bresnahan School. And then the loop is done, so families will come in from North Atkinson and they have the option of dropping off. We're going to have barricades there so that people can't drop and try and pull out, so it's going to be controlled in terms of the drop-off and pick-up the same way. And parents will drop off and then either have the option of going out Murphy or circling back around again and going out North Atkinson. There will be a police presence on High Street, North Atkinson, and Low Street. There will be crossing guards at every one of the entrances. Every single teacher has been assigned one or another duty in terms of opening day, so that we will, and we know that there's going to be tweaks to this plan, but this is what we've come up with so far, and that the system will work the same in reverse going home. So I think we've covered all bases. We're just going to have someone out trying to direct traffic during heavy voting time during that Tuesday the 9th between 7 and 8:30 in terms of directing traffic and trying to keep. Voting will occur in the library of the school, so that you come in the front entrance and then come in one door and then you can go out another door of the library. And we can separate the media room from the library. And then we'll have 3 more votes at the Bresnahan, and then it will move to the Senior Community Center unless we have another special election after December 9th. So I think we've tried to cover all bases at this point in terms of what's going on.
So voting won't stay at the school?
After the
It will
Senior
move.
Community Center is,
Okay.
and I think that makes the teachers, much more comfortable about
Well, it's
yeah,
safety
safer,
and
safety and security.
It's a
and,
lot.
Yeah.
So the buses now can access around the piles?
Well, the piles are over on one
Okay,
side now.
okay, I didn't-
and so
okay, they
there's
moved them.
They come in and it circles,
Okay.
yeah. They couldn't do the paving until they
'Cause they
moved the piles farther away.
That's what I
So
thought.
there's not that
Okay.
much left for them to do, and then the fill comes in.
We are going to next Tuesday also, we are going to have all 13 buses, we're going to stack the buses. And
Have them go around
Have
and
them
drop
go
off and
around.
do a
Oh,
trial
good.
run. And we're bringing the ladder truck from the fire department to do a run, just to be sure. But so far, so good. I mean, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. We still have, some landscaping that we had promised to the abutters. We still have a big fence to put up, which is going up, I think, next week or the week after, along the Murphy Ave side. And so far, I think things are going very well at Bresnahan.
Mr. Menon?
Just, I actually had been thinking about the election and about what we're going to do. And I just wonder with the eventual shift out of the Bresnahan School, whether the PTO will still get first dibs at selling cake and cupcakes at the senior center, because it is a fundraising activity that they do. Both schools that
I don't see why not.
Yeah, the question about
Yeah.
the Brown, it's the same thing, it's the same
Right.
question.
Mhm.
That'll remain as a polling center, and I guess have a community group selling cupcakes or something.
And I guess I have to ask the question, what is happening to the movement of Lydia's playground?
At this point, we received a sticker shock regarding $45,000 to move the playground.
This is just the big blocks now in the amphitheater?
Well, it's the whole thing.
Right, but not the bricks.
The bricks are part of it.
I thought we weren't moving the bricks.
No, we were planning on moving the bricks that encircled
Right.
the amphitheater. Those were to stay.
And the benches, the granite benches?
Yes, and all of the granite stones, including the stone with Lydia's signature.
That's right, not the bricks.
Cobblestones and plaque. But the bricks that the Brown School parents and, people in the community purchased,
Correct.
we feel strongly that they should stay there
Okay.
at the school.
So,
Perhaps-
Ellen, can you clarify again? So not the granite?
Yes.
Oh, yes, the granite, no,
Well-
the bricks.
Just the granite, the cobbles, the cobble and the granite, all of those hard, the bricks that encircle.
Okay, I understand. I think part of it was the passion and commitment that your group has in the Lydia Foundation to this, that I think that, we just responded to and were, said, of course, we were willing to do this, but had no monetary figure attached to it. And then in conversations with the principals, they don't want those granite benches because the students get hurt on them. They have sharp edges, and they said, absolutely not, you're not moving those here. So we have some work to, this is all, again, new information. So I think we need to sit down and have a conversation to probably meet over at the amphitheater, take a look at what's there, and figure out how we can honor Lydia, and, we need to figure this out. I think there's no definitive statement at this point that it's not going to happen. It's just that we have to figure out how and what makes sense to move and how we get there, and how we can do this at a very reasonable cost.
I appreciate that, and I also hope that's why I asked about the feasibility study. I thought perhaps maybe there would be others out there who would have a more reasonable cost to move the amphitheater, or maybe it could be done in another more creative way. I don't know.
Well, we can talk about that, but I think, again, the feasibility study is very, very specific, and it's short money anyway to what's going on in terms of the adaptive reuse of the Brown School. I think that we can bring landscape architectures, we have some on the Parks Commission. I think there's ways that we can regroup and have a conversation there. Anytime you put a change order with an existing building project, the cost is phenomenal. And I think if we do this with volunteers and in a different way, we can figure it out and make it so that we bring what the teachers feel are safe for the children, and also honors Lydia. So we will continue this conversation, and we'll figure it out at some point in the not too distant future. It might take us till the spring to actually move it over there once we get more of the site work done and we can figure out where it belongs to. I think that's another piece, because everything is such an upheaval there at this juncture. But we can get there in terms of figuring that out.
Because the school committee took a vote, obviously, on moving the playground without the financial attachment to it.
And without the feedback from the principal from the Brown School in terms
Correct.
of her concerns
Correct.
about the injuries that have happened on those sharp granite benches, and maybe we can just figure out a way to soften them, and so they're not,
Or to use them primarily for the children that are a little bit older, like 1 through 3rd grade, because we for many years used that in the theater.
Right. Right.
So
these are all these are all the things we can figure out, Ellen. I'm sure we can figure all these things out, as we go forward.
Great, that's good news.
yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
So you're saying we will move it?
Well, we have to figure out what parts of it.
No,
how
I
much it's gonna
understand that,
cost,
but
we
it's
also
still on the table.
Yes, but I also think that we also need to take a look at what are the programs that are being continued at the Brown School,
Yes.
and these are all the things that are on the table that we have to decide.
Right, I understand that.
And we will figure it out, and we will honor Lydia, and we will make whatever makes sense, that we'll figure it out. I have full confidence that between, the South End neighborhood, the school personnel, and, the creative landscapers we have in our community, that we can figure this out.
Great. And you'll keep us up to date on that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, yes,
I
Audrey.
just thought of it. So there was actually at the Bresnahan a garden with a memorial to another teacher. What happened to that?
All of those were preserved and were moved.
And we're gonna
Put them,
put them somewhere.
yes, yes. And we actually got calls from individual families who, for example, planted a tree in honor of their deceased child. And so there were, we tried very hard to, to recognize, and Christina, thank goodness, has been there a long time, so she was able to identify some of those important pieces too. Yeah. So.
Any further questions about the Bres? Moving on. Thank you.
Knockmullen.
Want somebody else to do that one?
No, it's fine. No, I did a full walkthrough today with the team there. And you have to look at the building from the perspective of contractors, not from teachers or parents, and then your anxiety level decreases tremendously as you walk through the building. And then you begin to look at, that's right, these lights are in, they've connected these ducts, the fire, sprinkler systems now, they're down, they're coated, they're covered, they're removed. You begin to look at it from a different set of eyes, because I think the first time you would walk in there 2 weeks ago, I was very concerned. I'm very, very pleased with the work that was accomplished since I was there last week. They had 55 people on site during the weekend, 95 on Friday, 13 electricians. The fire department is doing their final fire safety testing on Wednesday. The last testing they did, which included a good portion of the school, all passed beautifully. They don't anticipate problems. There is the auditorium, which all the scaffolding is down now, which is, and the painting has been almost completed. They have a little bit of work to do on one of the walls. Then they will put the carpet down and they start putting the chairs in, and then the lights. It's going to be absolutely a showpiece for the community, and that goes back to one of your comments about looking at fees, because we need to, with all new equipment in there too, lights, sound, curtain. It's going to be beautiful. They finished some of the site work for the entrances, still more to be done. But they assure me that it will be done before students arrive back. Several of the classrooms in this final phase are in really good shape. New furniture for the science lab have come in, which was nice to see, because two of the science lab weren't in really good shape last week, and they're in much, much better shape at this point. The building needs a tremendous amount of cleaning, and when we pushed Gilbane at our school building committee meeting on Thursday night, they have assured that they have a whole team ready to come in and go. The workshop and the robotics lab is the one room that has very high probability at this moment in time that will be delayed a little bit. We know the auditorium will not be finished for opening day, but it will be on the 13th. Not sure about that workshop room at this point. However, the beautiful new skylights were going in today over that room, which was nice. If you drive around the building with the roof work, you'll see that this is white material that comes over the roof, and there's this other flashing that's supposed to go around. That's going to be started tomorrow. The music rooms are in good shape, but I'm not sure. The art room looks a lot better, but that's the one room that I'm not 100% sure will be ready for opening day. It's close. One of the locker rooms is significantly improved, and they'll be working on the other one. All the stalls for the bathrooms are finally in, which also was of concern, and all the china, toilet sinks and all of that. They were chlorinating all the water today, which caused a lot of problems for those who worked in the building all day and needed to use facilities.
How about
But
the library?
the library is small, but good team in there, setting up shelves. All the books are in, furniture's in, so that's starting to be put back together again. So the whole carpeting is down, the ceiling's in, the lights are in. So, there's a lot of cleanup around the site too that needs to happen. When you have this, lengthy construction, there's just trash everywhere. So, every day I visit the site and I'm there a lot. I feel more confident in terms of going forward. The big test will be on Wednesday when they come in to do the final certifications at this point.
Is that the day after tomorrow?
Yes.
Yes, we're hopeful that, that assuming we get the certifications on Wednesday, that teachers will be able to come into the building to set up classrooms Thursday and Friday.
And through the weekend.
And we will have the building open over the weekend as well.
Ms. McCarthy?
Okay, so if you were a parent or a student walking in, how does it look?
A disaster. There's, but it's
That's today.
How's it gonna look on the first day of school?
it's
Better.
going to look
Much better.
much better
And-
because what they're doing is the final. I mean, the technology is the final testing of that. Voice systems is there working on on the phones and the security technology, and so they're tying in and bundling the last of that. And then there is one major quarter that was loaded with ceiling tiles. They're all up, and the lights are done. So it will be finished. It will be finished.
And so three other questions. So the library, are those new books? Did they?
Yes, we ordered new books for the library too. There's some old ones that weren't as bad shape, but but we went through that library also.
Okay. And so the superintendent, you're gonna be back where you belong
They
Yeah.
hope to turn it over Wednesday.
on the first day of school? Because I just go back 2 years ago.
It didn't look too bad. I walked through there today.
Which
Big improvement from Friday.
I don't see this being the case, but 2 years ago, our special ed students didn't get services for several months, and there was a million excuses, and a few of them were about space, and this room was being used for this, so we didn't have this, we don't have that. Any concerns about
Special
ed up
education
and running?
classrooms are done. They were in a different phase, and they're really nice. They're looking good. And, extra things like doors that weren't targeted initially to be replaced, we said, really? They're replacing them. Some of the cabinetry that was not replaced in some of the classrooms, they've actually taken off the doors and refinished. So they're really doing some extra pieces to make the classrooms look better.
So once school starts, any additional work is being done at night?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a punch list. I mean, there still is the auditorium that will need to be finished, and then that woodworking room, and then I think, they're telling me that they believe the art room will be ready, and it's really, again, significant improvement from Friday. But my biggest concern is that they bring in a massive team of people to do major cleaning. Major cleaning, because, there's just dust everywhere. But, like the ramp was done, that wasn't done last week in terms of the flooring on that. So they're painting all the railings. They put the wrong color in one of the railings, and so that's all being changed. And so they're really, it's down to that level of detail.
As a parent and a student, the one thing that I would remind you is that the kids, this is all they've known for over a year. So, I mean, from the kids' perspective, they're going to come back to a building that is going to look more complete than it did when they left, for sure.
I'm just concerned because all we've talked about is how we want the presentation of the Bresnahan to be awesome, and I just don't want that lost, because you do have a group of kids moving up into that school. And so my thought was, okay, what they left, and now what they've got, I wasn't sure there was a balance. I want them to have the same wow that Bresnahan will have.
Yeah, there is a difference between renovate as new and a brand-new building.
Which we understand, but
Yeah.
10-year-olds don't understand that.
But all the bathrooms, I mean, those bathrooms were horrible. They look
they were
real.
awful.
The bathrooms look really nice, all new well, they're not new, but they're renovated locker rooms. The walls of the gym, beautiful new bleachers, handicap sections of the bleachers. I mean, so and then the auditorium. So there's going to be, in all the classrooms. So it's again, they have been incredibly responsive to a lot of demands from a lot of different ways, in terms of, well, I don't like that color, I don't like that, who ordered that rug, but I didn't want that color here, take out this desk, this is like 6 inches too, so they've been incredibly responsive and tried to meet all the needs of all, 2 schools, 2 principals, and a lot of teachers coming at them, and I give, Gilbane a tremendous amount of credit for, this is a hard project to do a phased-in renovation.
What caused the, because for a long time it was on time, which I know things happen, but was there one specific thing that happened, or just,
No, I can't say
not one?
there really was, because there were certain things that they were ahead of the game, in terms of, I know that there were problems in the ductwork in the auditorium, and that's what delayed the auditorium, because we had to do a major change order, and they had to do additional work, and that delayed them at least 3 weeks, and hence that's why we're 2 weeks over.
Well,
So,
one of the biggest things that I noticed right off the bat is the difference in the lighting. The lighting is so much improved with new skylights, and, I was in the auditorium today, and it is like a completely different facility, because the lighting is so much better.
and the classrooms, the hallways, the new technology, which the new projectors are all in the classrooms now, and then, they're starting to bring in all of the new computers for the teachers to set them up, and so they're, that's very exciting also. So yeah, no, it will. There will be punch list things, like there's like this, baseboard kind of stuff in one area is like, what about that? So once we get everything open, then Susan and I will go and do our walkthrough again with our, our white glove, and when we're real close to, probably on Tuesday or Wednesday, and do our walkthrough again and just make sure, where we are. But I think people will be happy, very happy. Because first, when you come in the main doors, you see the differences in the offices. And now there's new security systems for either, if you're going into Mullen or Knock, where it's the video camera, and then, the fob if you have the card, or, you have to be let in. So very, very pleased. Just don't know yet if the security system has all been tied in, but the cameras are up all around the building. So it's good. It's good.
So are all classroom teachers in their classroom that they're going to be in for the rest of the year?
Yes.
So we're not
Yes.
moving staff
No
and
one's
kids?
moving ever again.
Okay.
Well,
I think that's important to say, though,
Yes.
because teachers and students have been so wonderful in
They have.
moving and
being cooperative,
so that's good news too.
Yeah.
Could I just ask you, since we all had an adventure getting into this room tonight, what about the front of the high school?
That I know. They're going. The columns are where?
The columns are up. It's
It's
the
the.
finial,
That's supposed to be complete before the start of school.
That's what I was told by Steve, but I don't have any other level of detail on that
okay.
project for
Just
you.
curious.
Yeah.
Just curious. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you. Next is a report from the Communications Ad Hoc Committee. As some of you know, at the end of last year, we recognized as a school committee that we needed to get some community input as to our mechanisms of communication. So we sent out a notification, and several community members and teachers, and actually 4 school committee members volunteered to be on that ad hoc committee. The committee itself met twice, once June 24th and then July 15th. We asked ourselves 3 questions. How does the school committee respond to the public? How do we as the school committee get information out about specific topics? And what are the current ways that parents' community can contact the schools? So during those 2 meetings, we had a think tank and came up with several recommended strategies for improving communication. We have now collated that. It has gone to the policy subcommittee, of which Mr. Menon is the chair. During the school committee retreat, we unveiled our hopes for this year. So I'm going to turn this now over to Mr. Menon. I would like to thank Ms. McCarthy, Mr. Decanter, and Mr. Menon for serving on that ad hoc subcommittee. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Mr. Menon.
Sure. The set of recommendations that came out of the conversation that we had as part of the ad hoc there are some new and interesting things that have come up, I think, that are interesting ways to approach it. We got a lot of really good feedback about how to reshape some things that we're currently doing to perhaps appeal more to the community and to be a little bit more effective. So what I want to do is sort of go over the recommendations of that committee that, in fact, we're sort of presenting to the school committee as a whole. One of the things that we talked a lot about, and actually I didn't get a chance to ask you about this earlier, but we had a lot of conversation about the website and how it's going to be accessed and how it's going to, what's going to be different about the website. And before I ask the superintendent just for an update on that, because you know the plan was that it may not coincide with school opening, but it's going to be pretty close to it. At least that was our initial hope. I know that part of what the group talked about was that as soon as a beta was available, Nick, who had been working for years on the website, would get a chance to take a look at it. So I just wondered if the superintendent might have an update, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we hope to see rolled into that.
2 weeks ago, Kathy Manning and I had a phone conference with the person who has been assigned to us, and we talked through some of the features that we wanted to be sure were on the website. She has been working on those. Kathy contacted her today. I don't know the result of that, but I would expect that within the next week or so, we would be getting together again to see what progress has been made, and she would be showing us. I don't want to roll this out until it's been vetted through a number of groups, including the school committee. I think that I want to make sure that this has the features in it that everybody is looking for. And I think it's going to be important for people to weigh in. So that I would much rather have this, if we're at the end of September or beginning of October, I would much rather wait and make sure we have all the features that we want than, and we have the ability to continue to work with Catapult if there are things that we want to add in the future, if new features come out. Any of the updates that they have, we can access in the future as well. So I think that I want to make sure that we have a website that is going to be useful and functional.
And again, maybe Nick or you can share more of this. The idea was that the district was going to have this website that was much more functional, much more active, and that in turn that would drive some changes on the websites of each of the individual schools.
Each school will have their own individual website, but there are going to be certain things that are common to all of them. And most important of that is how do you navigate the website. So if you're used to looking at the upper right-hand corner to find school menus, that will continue to be there across the entire K-12 spectrum.
Are the existing individual websites of the schools being plugged into a template?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I can't tell you how good that makes me feel on a personal basis.
Yes. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done on the subpages, the home pages for each of the schools and the district. The dummies that they've presented are spot on with the kinds of things that we're looking for. But as we well know, that's just the start of it all. And so digging deep into it, I wasn't able to, today at least, to understand exactly where they're taking, as is typical in these cases. As I was digging through it, there were a lot of broken links. There were links that were on there and working, but that I knew we weren't going to continue, because what they've done is they've taken the content that we have right now, taken it over and put it on their servers, so they can can then work with it, mold it to our needs, and reorganize it. And that is the process that they've been working on in the past 2 or 3 weeks. A lot of that is re-chunking all of that data. I mean, if you took a look at the district website, I think it sort of tells something about what we're doing. The content site, where they basically put all of the things, had over 40 links on it. And that's what our website is right now. No wonder people can't navigate it. And so now it's a question of grouping those links, of putting them under tabs in a way that makes sense to all users, whether they be students, faculty, parents, people who just want information about our schools. They have done a lot of very good school websites, and that's why we selected them. And one of the things that impressed me was the way in which they navigated. So I'm confident that we'll get there. I am still, like Susan and Kathy, very eager to see what happened in the past 2 weeks.
The two things that did come out of the two recommendations that did come out of the ad hoc subcommittee that we would share is one that our expectation that increasingly as part of our communication strategy with the community, we're going to make use of surveys, and that the website will actually have that built into it. The second piece is that the school committee will have a drop-down menu, and one of the things we're going to put on that menu that doesn't currently exist is an FAQ for the school committee, so that people can understand sort of what our role is and the kinds of things that they can get in touch with us about to raise as issues, and the kinds of things that we're going to be referring back through the chain of command in the schools. So we're in the process of sort of outlining that, and we'll make a presentation. But those are two specific recommendations that came.
Those are two features that are fairly standard. Certainly FAQs is very standard, and surveys are becoming more and more. It now becomes a question about whether the surveys actually take place on their servers or whether it's cheaper and easier for us to go to one of the services that
they're standard
and just link to it. So.
They're standard elsewhere. For us, they're a great new adventure.
No, but I'm saying is from a website design point of view.
Right.
Rest assured that this will be taken care of. I think that this is not something that's going to become a sticking point for us in any shape or form.
The next area in which we had some feedback and have some presentation to make has to do with, we had a lot of talk about public conversation about what works, what doesn't work, and essentially two different sets of recommendations that interlock came out of the conversation with the ad hoc committee that they would like us to be proposing. One is that we would start out in this coming year with 4 meetings, 2 per semester. Those meetings would be topic meetings, set topics, and how we identify those set topics could be through surveys. They're not going to be sort of what's the spur of the moment. It might be, standardized assessment, which would cover PARC and MCAS, whatever we decide, and we being trying to cast as wide a net as possible to get some of these ideas. We would have 2 of those meetings per semester. They would occur on school committee meeting nights from 6:30 to 8 p.m. so that the school committee meeting agenda for that night would be intentionally looked at for just adding topics that are really critical topics. The meetings would begin at 8, and they would not have the agenda that other school committee meetings would have, so that they would end at the same time, but that would give us an hour and a half for really dealing with that topic. So we're looking to do 2 each semester as sort of an experiment for this year, as a pilot for this year. And we would then be going back into our as we schedule these, we'll be going back into our calendar. The critical piece of this, obviously, is making sure everybody knows in as far in advance what the topic is and what night it is, so that the TV is, the folks from the cable station aren't surprised, and the community can really get together and read this topic. But by stretching it to an hour and a half, we think that that's going to really allow us to have not only information, but then the give and take that we need. The second,
Before you get on to the second one, if I may say, one of the key elements that we discussed in this is to make available to to the community through our website a page that has a series of links, pro, cons, whatever, so that people can go and get the information they need to come and voice an educated opinion in the meetings. And so that they're not just coming to learn, although many people will, but we do have a place where people can go and learn more about park before coming to talk about park.
The recommendation and the intention is to provide documents for people to look at on, you know, if it's an issue that has sides on either side of the issue. It may just be documents that we're working with or that are links out there to information, but that we want to make sure that people coming to these meetings have an opportunity, not just 2 days before, but weeks before, have an opportunity to get access to information so that they can read and formulate their own questions. An additional 3 to 4 times a year, so it looks like we're doing, if we're going to be doing 4 of this, at least every month we're going to be doing some sort of conversation, either the forum or what we're going to call our more traditional public conversation, where we'll advertise it. We won't necessarily, the conversations will be open-ended, and we talked about creating a structure, a format. Those public conversations will also require an adjustment in the school committee meeting times, because rather than have a 30-minute public conversation, we will have an hour public conversation. So that would be from 6:30 to 7:30, and those school committee nights would have meetings beginning at 7:30 p.m. The meetings would start at 7:30 p.m. And we've talked about a number of ways of sort of generating some topics. One of the suggestions literally was to go around the room and ask people what they want to talk about so that we can budget the time to make sure that anybody in the room, if 3 different people with 3 different topics, have something they want to say, that we can do that. But that again would extend that public conversation for an hour, and where we can identify topics before the meeting. We might post those topics, but again, it doesn't look like we would be having public conversation at every single meeting, but certainly every month we'll be doing either one of these forums or public conversations. We're thinking 3 to 4 times a year with this change for the 1-hour public conversation. If it looks like there's really a lot of interest in it and that they're really useful, that is a fluid number of times we're going to do it. But we, these were the recommendations, the 2 sets of recommendations around public conversation that came out of the ad hoc that we feel comfortable presenting to the school committee. Additionally, with our public comment, everybody sort of expressed frustration. There was sort of give and take about whether there should be 1 or 2, but everybody expressed frustration with the protocol for public comment, where people come up, they lay something out, and then we sort of nod very sagely and don't respond. And what we sort of need to draft a protocol. We suggested a change in that people really felt better about, and that is that people could come up for public comment if there is a question that they're asking that simply requires information, and the mayor has the information or the superintendent has the information. The vice chair running the meeting will turn to either one and say, "Would you care to respond?" It may be a topic that's brought up that one of the subcommittee chairs has information, or one of us has been working with. While it won't be a conversation, a dialogue, the vice chair will have the opportunity to say, "We have some information here. Would you like to share that?" Or to say, "We will get back to you. The superintendent will get back to you within 2 weeks." But it will be a little bit more interactive, and that I think is going to address some of the frustration of people sitting there knowing that there's a response that could be made in that moment, and the formula is not to be able to do that. Again, that is going to be incumbent on understanding that it is public comment. We don't each have to give a piece of information back to the individual who is making the comment. But the purpose of that public comment then really is to put something on the agenda for us to either deal with or provide information about. So that is going to be a change that we will initiate. And some of these changes we're hoping to begin to initiate in September in our first meetings. We also talked about the folks at the ad hoc really felt that an introductory letter coming from the school committee out to parents at the beginning of the school year would also help set the tone about not only what the role of the school committee is, what our thinking is and what we're hoping to see and what we've been working on. So that would, again, that's going to be something we're going to need to develop in the next week or two, if that's going to happen. And then finally, as another way for getting information out, a number of communities use tax bills as a mechanism to get information out to the entire community. So we are looking at that as well. We did not have enough time to explore all of the topics that we had, so we identified 2 additional topics that we will continue conversation on in some format, whether it's policy or whether we pull the ad hoc together again or a subcommittee of that. One was we really need, we think, to do a much better job. Social media exists. Rather than be victimized by it, as is increasingly happening in this district and in districts all over the state and in the country, we need to be able to explore the use of social media as a means of better communication, not only for the administration, but for the school committee. And the issue was, again, identified the possibility of a school committee blog. And those are 2 topics that we need to discuss further. But we did want to take from the ad hoc group a set of really clear recommendations about how we can improve communications between us and the community. I don't know if anybody who participated wants to add to that. Cheryl, is there? Audrey, Nick?
No, but I would just like to say that we did put in a second public comment for the end of this evening because it was the superintendent's evaluation. So we'll try the new protocol out for public comment at the end of this meeting.
So that's the direction we want to move forward, and I think...
I think the other thing that was consistent from the committee, if I had a dime for every time I heard somebody say, but do something, I'd be a very wealthy man today.
Yep.
So on all fronts, we feel the need for action. We invite the community to continue to interface with Bruce, with Audrey, and with myself as we continue to work on fine-tuning these ideas and get them ready for the school committee to take action. And some of them we're going to have to try without having officially adopted, like you might today with the public comment, to get a feel for them, to understand how they will work, and to understand what needs to be tweaked. And so we invite you to please be participants in that. Keep the communication open with us, please.
That's what I got.
What's our next step for this?
Well, I think there are a number of items here that are not contingent on the website being up and running. So I think that what we want to do next is I think we need to identify topics for the first 2 of those public conversation forums, those 90-minute forums. So I will be in touch with the superintendent to find out about getting a survey out, because that was one of the topics. Making use of a survey to generate topics, and because we're on cable tonight, I would encourage the community to get in touch with the superintendent with topics that they might want to see. These are more in-depth topics. Again, it might not be the pro and con of PARC, but it might be about PARC and MCAS and standardized assessments and what our community is doing, what other communities are doing. So these kinds of topics are the kind that we really want. We might invite people in with some expertise to participate in this, but the purpose of those 90-minute sessions is not to have the experts talk for an hour and then have questions. The idea is to bring somebody in who knows something and then have a conversation with the community back and forth, so that we can all learn. So
I think we're hoping that teachers will be a part of that whole process too. And I'm not leaving out the assistant superintendent either, because I think both with public comment, I may ask you if you have a clarity or whatever, and then you also may be able to generate topics for us to, think about, just because that we don't know sometimes what we need to know.
I would say, Madam Vice Chairman, the other people that we should reach out to as soon as school starts is some of our most compelling discussions have been student-driven.
Yes.
So we need to reach out to students, particularly in at the NOC in the high school, but really throughout the district. You'd be surprised what, out of the mouths of babes is the same. They get it. They know what's important.
You know, I skipped actually one piece, and I apologize. School committee email response. And it's right here, and I skipped right over it. And there was a lot of conversation about having both a protocol-driven response that acknowledges we have gotten some mail and a substantive response to it. And part of our struggle, and we shared this, part of the struggle has been for several years, is how the school committee can respond without running afoul of open meeting laws, without deliberating. There's a real belief that, if you identify a single school committee member, they cannot speak on behalf of the whole school committee, but it may be a question that we're getting that the school committee needs to respond to. So the steps around that are that as soon as possible, we are going to create an auto response that acknowledges that we've gotten something, and B, commits to a full response within a given period of time. It's ambitious, but we were talking about 2 days, about being able to respond more substantively to the question within 2 days. But that auto response is something we can generate in the next couple of days and get it out. And then we also need to have a conversation with the attorney to get really clear. And some of this stuff, part of the frustration is that some of this stuff some of how we are able to respond or what we can't do is literally being created by case law on an annual basis. That something comes up that nobody ever thought of, so it goes through litigation, and then the judge sets some parameters around it. So it's a moving target in some ways, but at least we can take the snapshot by talking with our attorney about what constitutes deliberation in a response from the school committee to an email that's going to go from the school committee. And again, it has changed over the last 3 years, which we've got to be able. It doesn't make any sense to me that we have a system that holds the school committee quiet on issues that the community wants to talk about. It doesn't make sense. And the law is supposed to make sense, and most of the time it really does. So there's got to be some conversation about this. So I will then also be in touch with the superintendent about a conversation. Or maybe we all have a conversation. We had talked about doing that, having an in-service. The other thing that I'll do is I'm continuing to work on the FAQ, and we'll solicit feedback from everybody on that to get that up and running. I will talk about getting the automatic email response. I think that's about it for right now. And then we'll also policy will create a protocol for public comment, how we're going to do that, just so that we've got a policy around it. So those are all we're working on, all of those things before the next school committee meeting.
Just next week.
Well, no,
It's next
it
week.
might be the 15th.
The one after that.
Yeah. Not really one next week. But anyhow, that's our report.
And are you anticipating the school committee letter to go out this year?
It would be nice, but
We're
let's
close to the
let's
drawing
try it. Yeah, I know,
point,
we are
so.
We should try it.
We should try it. Yeah, I think so. Nick and I
Okay,
volunteered.
I'm just asking to, I want to know what the next step is here,
Yeah.
that's all. I just,
Yeah. Well,
okay.
there are a number of next steps.
Right, right.
So, and that's one of them. And Nick and I will have that pinned down, and we'll get that to you before the week is out, I am sure.
And do you have a date for your next policy committee meeting? We might as well go that
I
far.
believe it's the 15th, right? I believe it's
That's what I
the 15th.
thought.
It is the 15th.
Okay,
Mexican Independence Day.
thank you.
Is it?
Now we're going to move on to presentation of templates, and I am going to turn this over to Mr. Cole, who actually developed a template that then Mr. Lukens and Mr. Cole communicated about and are now going to present that to the school committee.
Well, I think you'd asked me about putting together something that can be utilized by all the different subcommittees, and
Yes.
this simple template just allows committee to indicate new business, old business, who may be currently responsible for a certain item or task, who may have that assigned in the future or between meetings, and just as a running document, it's more action-oriented, and I think it just helps the committee develop some momentum, if you will, as well as record where the committee's been reflective and what the decision process has been. So, it's pretty much straightforward.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Lukens? You worked on this as well.
No, I mean, I think the focus is on, who's responsible, what the action item is, and the due date, and I think it's important to make sure that those things are included in all of our meeting minutes and agendas as well, so that we can ensure accountability for goals that we set in each committee and make sure that progress is being shown toward those goals over the course of the year. So that's the spirit of this template, is capturing that information.
In continuity, as we said across the website, it's nice if you can click on something and it's the same. So, Mr. Decanter?
I was just going to say precisely that one of the things that I like about it is that all of the minutes for each subcommittee will look the same, making it easier for the public at large to read them and actually get something out of them. And because they are action-oriented, I think it will also hold the committees more accountable.
Right.
I think it's great work.
And Mr. Menon did use this new form for his policy subcommittee report for this evening, so.
I found it very useful. I did find it curtailing my creativity somewhat, but I'm willing to make the sacrifice.
Sometimes less is more.
Sometimes less is more.
Do we need to vote on accepting this document?
Oh, I don't think.
No?
We do.
Great. All right, we're going to move on now. What a meeting. Now, this leads us to our second public comment with the changed rules, if you will, but it's not a conversation. We would like you to come up if you have a question, a comment to make to us, and we feel it's appropriate for one of us to answer immediately, we will. If not, we'll take it under advisement. Is there anybody that has a comment at this time? Yes. Please state your name and your address, and still try to keep it to 2 minutes, please.
6 Merrimack Street. No, just really quickly, with what's going on tonight, again, I want to thank Susan for everything she's done this past year. I I came tonight specifically for the superintendent's evaluation, and I'm glad to hear what was done by the school, because I think in the year that she's been here, there has been some significant positive change in the district. The second thing is, in regards to these changes in public comment, I'm happy to see that there are 2 public comments on the agenda, and I do hope that we continue to have that going forward. It's nice to have an opportunity to listen to what's gone on throughout the meeting and then be able to make a comment regarding that. What I would like to see is, regarding these comments and public conversations, having some kind of a formal protocol on following up on those items, be it once a month, or, if we have one of these standard 1.5 things and there's action items that come out of that, it would just be nice if we follow up, because in the years that I've been coming, there have been many topics that are brought up and then they're kind of left. So it would just be nice if we, in doing this new process, also put in some kind of a protocol for a quarterly, monthly, whatever follow-up. And then I guess what I'd also like to see made easier, or again, a protocol, is to be able to add something to the official agenda, like what kind of notice is required if someone does have an issue that requires more than a public comment, or is different from public conversation. Can we publicize how to get something on the agenda, how long it would take to have a more in-depth discussion?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any further public comment? Yes.
I wasn't planning on making one.
See what happens when I open up 2?
Really? Well, actually, it's a kudo. I was very, very impressed with the school committee and the way that they have really focused on communication, shared communication, and making the process of public comment more interactive. And of course, I'm focusing on the amphitheater, and after the first public comment that I just made, I'm still feeling that it's very vague as to what the next step is. And that's actually one of the reasons why I asked that this be part of the feasibility study, because it's kind of critical in the way that how do you go about attacking the problem of moving this structure to a different venue. And so I would love to be part of this process, and I would like to tap into all the problem-solving strategies that you certainly have used, because you've done your homework and you certainly have made some real, I think, progress in having the community really understand what the school committee is about and what your mission is and what your vision is. And I would like to be part of that. And of course, as you know, my main objective is to get that beautiful amphitheater moved to the Bresnahan School in a space that is appropriate and won't lead to injuries.
Right. We understand that,
Yeah.
yes.
And so I just appreciate that you've given us the opportunity, the trustees, the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.
Donna, do you want to address that? What your next step is, or your timeline, or what they can expect?
Can we get the schools open?
Yeah, no, I think they
Please.
understand that. I think what she's just asking,
I
you know, maybe we can say you'll meet by the end of September, or
Well, we have to meet again with the, we're working on a date to meet with the South End neighborhood too, in terms of that piece. And there were some very strong feelings about people really loving that and wanting it to stay there. So I think that that might be part of a conversation for the foundation to come and to talk. I mean, there were people who were very adamant that, well, if this is going to stay for youth, we want this still here. So, because it's been part of the community for a long time, so then you get that pushback, then you get the financial issues, then you get the principal saying, we don't want the granite pieces, so it's like everything just sort of,
So there are a lot of pieces.
there's a lot of moving pieces to this, so I think that,
I'm glad you brought up about the South End community, because I was part of building everything that was down there.
I know.
The playground that,
mhm,
had to be demolished. So I understand the connection.
mhm,
The amphitheater itself, though, is kind of a living memorial. And their children experienced it, and it was great for them. And now it's time to move it on so that other children can also have that same type of experience. Now, the bricks, I think, definitely should stay there, because the kids, the parents, they love to go there, they love to look at that, it just brings back so many memories. And the space where the amphitheater is, perhaps there's something else that could go in there. Benches and landscaping and things, that still works for them and yet works for us, so that students can still have the opportunity to use this magnificent outdoor classroom.
I agree, I think.
And so I would love to be part of that timeline and part of the
Absolutely,
conversation.
absolutely. And I, again, because we'll be approaching colder weather, I think that we could use that time to sort of let the senior community center break ground, and we can let their landscaping be laid out so that, we know where their property is and where the next piece of the school property is, begin to get a feel for how the kids are using the site, because I think that's important too, in where, we don't want to just put it in some corner somewhere that's not going to be used. So I think that it's important for us to get sort of a flow of the school and how, because we have a basketball court and some other amenities that are going to be put in down the road too. So I think that those are all pieces that can be integrated with all of this too. So I think if we can work through, get the feasibility study done, meet with the community, have you there at that meeting, set up either a follow-up meeting with the members of the foundation to talk to the group then, begin to put outreach to the community about, we need help, volunteers to come and work with us on this, spend time with the principals and talk about where it makes sense at the Bresnahan, and then, we'll move forward. So I would imagine that probably timelines would be, we're going to be meeting late September, early October with the Brown School community. Again, I will let you know that. And then I would imagine we're probably talking spring in terms of a movement.
All right, so the conversation will begin with the South End community, and it would be nice to have some kind of a little more structure as to what the next step is after that.
Sure.
Some kind of, it doesn't have to be anything that's, etched in stone, but something that is, something we can follow, guidelines as to how all these things, and timeframes as to how all these things can be accomplished.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive. I have comments, no questions, but as always, I'm here to speak to school committee members. I don't know what you've done to public comment, but there's certainly been a lot of dialogue, so if any one of you want to engage me, as you've done some of the others in the audience, I certainly will oblige.
They're going to come through the vice chair, though, so we can
That's fine.
just control.
Understood.
Thank you.
Because it's a little different, we're all learning.
Yes.
There are two comments I'd like to make. The first deals with the issue of communications. I'm pleased to see that there have been a number of recommendations come out as a result of the ad hoc committee which I sat on. But I will tell you that most of them have all been discussed from this side of the table for the last 10 years, every one of them. So the challenge to you as a committee, if that's what you believe you wish to do in terms of opening up the lines of communication and being very transparent with the community, is that you have to sort of maybe outline for people how you want them to communicate with you, which again is still the same issue. There's email communications, there's ability to dialogue, et cetera, and you need to outline that. I think the prime opportunity for you to do so is your annual letter that you're going to be drafting for this year. There are a number of venues for people to communicate with the district, including this forum, meetings at various ad hoc committees. I personally believe, as many of you know, that the school councils are where a lot of these things ought to be hashed out. And I would encourage you to outline those sorts of avenues available to people so that they know how best to make their sentiments known. Having sat here for 10 years, I believe I can make some comments on priorities equally as well as some of you. And I would offer some commentary on what I think some of the priorities are. It's certainly nice to talk about very global issues like strategic planning and the budget and student achievement, and it's sort of a very nebulous thing you try to latch onto, but priorities, I think, are akin more to the things that some of the other school committee members emphasize individually. For example, I think Mr. Cole talked about the resources to provide what you want to give the students in the district as a basis for their education. The mayor alluded to several items that have been in this district talked about for many, many years, and just like the communications, there's a lot of talk and not a lot of substance that ever gets to them. For example, place-based education, senior projects, dual enrollment partnerships, and I don't know what you really think is a priority, but if they're priorities, then we ought to go out after them. And one of the ones I'm really going to toss out that I've tossed out the last year has to do with the high school. We've just thrown $50 million into the elementary school, the Brown, the Knock Bowman, the Bresnahan, we combined them. The high school still is suffering. You've seen it in the school improvement plan, very peripherally, but you go back 7 years and the superintendent inherited a very bad situation, but 7 years ago they lost 7.5 teachers. They've never been replaced. They're struggling continually with electives. The classes for the required courses are getting larger. Their technology is no longer anywhere near what you've put in the elementary school. Some of it's 7, 8 years old. And I would strongly encourage you to take a look at what the needs specifically are and make the high school a priority for this year. They need more electives, they need the ability to give more singleton classes so that you can afford a class of 9 students, maybe in a business class, or an accounting class, or an engineering class, and things of that sort. And so for me, a priority becomes very more specific. Everyone should have a strategic plan. Everyone should have a budget. But I think when you talk about prioritizing things, you want to take a real hard and fast look at what some of the programs are that you may want to improve upon. Someone else, I think, talked about elementary and middle school math. That's come down. We've always talked around about the issue of foreign language. So I think when you talk about priorities, the high school has to be out there, and I try to like to see it a little bit more specific on what you want to accomplish for next year.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Hearing none, we're going to move on. I'm going to make the subcommittee reports very quick. Joint Ed has not met since June. Our first scheduled meeting for this school year would be the first Monday in October because our first meeting in September is on a Tuesday. Finance has a schedule now for the year. Can you remind me of what that is, please, Mr. Cole?
I believe right now it's the third Thursday at 5:30.
Thank you. Policy, we've heard from the update from that policy committee this evening. Mr. Menon, what is your schedule, please?
Second school committee meeting, which would be the second Monday of every month at 5:30 here.
Thank you. Mr. Lukens, policy, instruction, and accountability?
Yep. Curriculum.
What did I say?
Policy.
I am, sorry.
CIA.
The CIA, I'm sorry.
The meetings will be held on the third Tuesday of each month at 5:30 in the superintendent's conference room. The first meeting of the new school year is September 16th, and the agenda for that meeting primarily will be to set the agenda for the committee for the rest of the year and set SMART goals for the committee for the rest of the year. So my one ask for the entire committee is if you have any curriculum, instruction, or accountability topics that you want to be considered as potential agenda items for that committee to handle, please contact me directly with those so we can discuss them.
Some of us already have. I know I've, okay.
So I'm going to
Thank you.
compile everything for that
Okay.
meeting, and we can.
Superintendent's evaluation, you saw the fruits of our labors of this year, and we will continue. We will be having an executive session this evening for school committee members. We will not be coming back to the public, so, yes, Mr. Menon?
Before we do that, can I ask, courtesy of Mr. Cole, our finance chair's eagle eyes, can I have a revote on one of our warrants as the number that we were given summarizing the total, and the total did not appear?
So do we need to turn it back to the bookkeeper, or can we do this?
I would like to,
All right, can you,
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $22,588.74 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts. This would be a substitute of bill which we originally approved for $17,133.48.
do I hear a second? Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Eagle Eyes. I forgot to give you the front page. The executive session for purpose of possible litigation. So we will be, I'd like to hear a motion for adjournment. We will not be coming back out. Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Take a roll call vote to go into executive.
Have we?
Yes.
Oh, roll call vote, please, Mrs. Kennedy. Mr. Menon, we need you for a roll call. He said yes.
Roll call.
He heard.
I'm hearing nice things about my daughter.
Yes.
Start with everyone else, Mrs. Kennedy. We'll end up with.
Mr. Menon, can you vote yes?
Yes.
Okay. voted yes. Ms. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. DeCanta?
Yes.
Mayor Holliday?
Yes.
Mr. Lukens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.